From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Open Line.
Good Monday evening, everybody. We're so happy that you're starting your week here with us here on Open Line. My name is Olivia Michael. We have a very special episode that we're calling today, Call the Veterinarian. And you could probably guess why. We're joined by a veterinarian right now, Dr. Kopp. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself, your line of work. What kinds of animals do you work with?
Yeah, so I'm from Nashville. I work out in Antioch, and at Priest Lake Veterinary Hospital, we see kind of all types of animals. So a large portion is dogs and cats, but we also do all sorts of exotic companion mammals. So a large portion of my practice is bunnies. That's a very large portion of my practice is bunnies, but we see guinea pigs and hamsters, gerbils, hedgehogs. The other doc at the practice will see the reptiles and the birds. But I've got been married for about 5 years now. Got a 3-year-old. And it's just enjoying the practice.
Awesome. So. Is there a specific breed of animals that you enjoy working with most, or you're an all animal lover?
I really love all breeds, but rabbits have a really special place in my heart. They really do.
Oh, I grew up with a rabbit myself, a Dutch, awesome. Which are huge. They grow to be about 30 pounds. We ended up having to keep them outside in a cage. But anyway, I have a soft spot for rabbits as well. We want to remind you that if you have a question about your furry loved one, now is the time to call in. Go ahead and be the first person to break the ice. The number to call in is 615-737 plus 615-737-7587. I know Dr. Kopp would love to answer your questions about your furry family member. So we'll go ahead and just dive right into it. It's the holidays, and if you're anything like me, when you think of the holidays, you think of your family around the table, and in my case, your dog sitting right next to everyone, hoping that a scrap happens to land on the floor. You know, of course, we really shouldn't feed our animals table food, but is there anything that's okay, or you really want to avoid it all? I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, so I'm okay if, you know, we veggies and things like that, especially that aren't cooked in a lot of fat or things like that, but really try to avoid especially high fat meats, avoid obviously chocolate. I think everybody knows about that, but it's always best to avoid it because we see so many dogs after Christmas, after Thanksgiving, after really any of the holiday get-togethers that are just having GI upset and just, you know, really sick because they ate something or they ate a little bit too much. So trying to avoid that. You know, things to also avoid are things that have a lot of onion or garlic that can cause a lot of blood issues. So trying to avoid anything cooked in that as well. So really, I always say it's best just to avoid it in general, but I know it's really hard, especially when they're looking at you so sweet, just with that little puppy dog eyes. But
yeah, that's definitely the case for my Sky. She's a 40-pound husky, and those puppy dog eyes are real, man. I'm a sucker for the puppy dog eyes.
I know it.
So is that the case also for cats, though? Because I know sometimes people like to feed their cats table food.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, again, I don't see as much of that just because a lot of my clients, I think they do a little bit better with their cats, but yeah, trying to avoid that is really the best thing. You know, again, if you a little bit, you know, again, just like dogs, a little bit of meat maybe, but veggies okay as long as there's not a lot of seasoning on it. But just try to avoid it. Get them a special little treat from the dog store, a special little bone, or you know, some wet food or something like that that we know is going to be a lot safer.
Yeah, and that's actually made for the animal, not for the human.
Exactly.
I have to remind myself that. You made an interesting comment that after the holidays, you see animals coming in with GI issues. Tell me about that. What do you see, you know, after Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's? So
especially, you know, after Christmas or New Year's or things like that, you know, again, most of it is, you know, dogs getting into too much food, then they're just, you know, really feeling off for a few days. Most of them do just fine. Occasionally after Christmas or things like that, you'll see dogs that ate you know, they got their new toys and they might have accidentally eaten the toy. Sometimes it gets stuck, sometimes it passes through, but you know, trying to make sure that they're supervised with those new rope toys or things like that. Or you'll have new people in the house and maybe they'll leave down things that they wouldn't otherwise. Cats love to play with dental floss, and you know, maybe you had a family member who didn't know to throw it away. The cat gets into it, and that can certainly cause some issues as well. And so really just trying to make sure if your family that's coming to your house doesn't know about what they should and shouldn't let your pup have, or your kitty cat, or whatever other kind of creature you've got. Just trying to make sure that you kind of talk to them about that and make sure that they're aware of that.
Yeah, and I wonder if your animal does get into something and you're worried, at what point should you reach out for help? Are there signs or things you should look for to, kind of be aware of in case the animal does get really truly sick?
Yeah, so things that I like to think of. So if they're lethargic or just kind of dumpy, not really wanting to move, if they're throwing up, that's always a good sign. Diarrhea as well. I'm always a proponent of early veterinary care, because the quicker you get them to me or to one of the other vets in Nashville, the less expensive it's going to be, the healthier that they're going to be, the chance that we can catch something serious is going to be a lot sooner. So I always err on the side of caution, even with my own. I mean, if they're just showing the slightest bit off, I'll take them to the clinic and just check them out. And I think that's a good thing to consider as well, is just preemptively doing it.
What are kind of the common mistakes or issues that you see people having with their pets?
Yeah, so I guess one of the most common things that we see is, overfeeding them, especially as we're talking about the holidays. We do see a lot of obesity in our dogs and especially our cats, and that can cause lots of chronic issues. So we can get issues like, major hip issues, arthritis, or knee arthritis, or they just not wanting to get up and wanting to move as much. And certainly, dogs don't have as many like heart attacks or things like that as humans do, but still, it really can slow them down and make their life a lot harder. And so that's one of the most common things that we do see. We also see quite a few with the more athletic dogs. We see injuries and things like that, or that's a pretty common thing where they'll go and they'll be playing at the dog parks and have knee issues or things like that, where they'll blow their ACL. But yeah, that's kind of what we see.
Yeah, interesting. And then, you talked about arthritis, and of course, for us humans, the weather certainly affects how arthritis and, other physical ailments affect you. Is that the case also for animals, especially now that we're really feeling that cold weather?
I think so. I mean, I do think that we have some of our dogs that come in that certainly are moving slower. Of course, it's impossible to really know, because it's just they can't tell us. But I do think that with the weather changes and things like that, certainly I think it's certainly possible.
Is there anything you can do to us humans take a leave or Advil? Do they make anything like that for animals?
Yeah, certainly. So certainly don't want to give any over-the-counter products for people to your baby. Always talk to your vet. Have them do a good physical exam, make sure that we know what the issue is first. That might include x-rays or blood work. But certainly there's lots of good anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, like Tylenol, that can be used safely in dogs. But again, my advice is always avoid those unless you talk to your vet first. I do see every now and then we'll see some toxicities associated with that, and those dogs can be quite sick.
And I would imagine that medication is different, again, like humans, depending on the size of the animal, the breed, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, you want your vet to be able to calculate it based on your baby's body weight, but not also that, but based on their ideal body weight. So if you have a skinnier cat or skinnier dog, or a bigger cat or a bigger dog, we want to make sure that that's all accounted for. And that's where your veterinarian will really come into play and be able to help you work through that to make sure that we're as comfortable as we can be, but also we're using medication safely.
Yeah. And one thing I was finding with my dog, interestingly, was she had lost a little bit of weight, nothing wrong with her blood or anything, but perhaps I may have given her too many treats. So she got used to eating the good stuff instead of the real dog food. But I know that there are sort of ways and tips that you could train your dog when to eat, the proper times. Any advice if your animal is maybe not eating the way they used to, they got too accustomed to table food, advice for folks to kind of get them back on a routine, on a regimen?
Yeah, so the first thing I always say again is we want to make sure that there's nothing else going on. So do they have dental pain? Do they have belly pain because of pancreatitis or other illnesses? Do they have kidney disease? So first thing I'm always going to do when you bring your baby to me is, okay, let's see what's going on, ask some really good questions, make sure that there's nothing else that could be causing it. Certainly, yes, some dogs do get spoiled, and that's where it just takes a lot of patience and a lot of just definitely cutting back on the treats and that. But But my first thing is I always want to make sure there's nothing else going on, because very, very commonly when that's the case, is because there's something else going on.
And I love how you refer to the animals as our babies.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're anyone like me, they are. They're your fur child.
Exactly.
But I can just tell how passionate you are about animals and your work as a veterinarian. Is this something you always knew you wanted to do?
For almost forever. So ever since I was just a little boy, that was exactly what I knew I wanted to do. And then got the opportunity to go to vet school, and it was just absolutely wonderful. It's the best job ever. I love getting to help getting to help families, getting to help their babies. It really is truly a very wonderful career.
And going to vet school is very difficult. I know that there's not a lot in the country, right? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, there's only about 33 of them currently. They're trying to get more, which we need more, because currently there's so many more pets that got adopted during COVID, and there's just certainly not enough veterinarians. That's probably a lot of people have noticed that it takes a lot longer to get in. It used to be before COVID, you could call, be seen by your vet that same day. We're booked out a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. We'll almost always be able to see a sick baby. But it's one of those things, it's much more difficult to get into your vet because there's not enough of us.
Well, I want to get into that, but we have to take a quick break for a commercial break. We'll be right back with Dr. Kopp after this.